everyone. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Ashley Wolf, and I lead the Open Source Program Office at GitHub. I'm excited to talk with you all about breaking barriers to make open source work at work. All right, let's dive into it. In the past 2 years, marked by extraordinary change, one thing has remained true. Developers continued to come together from around the world to innovate, connect, collaborate, and solve problems through open source. As you work from home with your colleagues in Japan and other parts of the world, the tools that make that possible are literally powered by open source. The amount of open source that we will rely on in the coming decades will continue to grow exponentially. Our cars will continue to get smarter. Software will help us diagnose, treat, and even prevent illnesses. It will help us improve the health of our planet as we develop solutions to combat climate change, food shortages, and resource constraints. And behind all of that is the open source community, a community that, of course, many of you watching today are a critical part of. Much of the software that we all use, build, and rely on was created by developers around the world that may have never spoken in person. The open source software they developed is ubiquitous and touches nearly every aspect of our daily lives. In the last year, there were nearly 5,000 contributions made on GitHub every minute. From how we communicate, our cars, the devices you're using right now to watch this talk, open source is everywhere, with progress happening every second. And while the ubiquity is impressive, so much of its progress depends on the individual. From the applications we use to the organizations we're a part of, building awareness and finding ways to contribute, even if you're not a developer yourself, is vital for continued success. In order to maintain the software we already have and create the software of the future, we need the open source community to grow. We need more developers, more maintainers, and more contributors to help meet the demand for more ever better software that works for us all. We need companies like yours with foundations in open source to participate in growing and sustaining the open source community so we can all create the software of the future together. There are many benefits for companies to embrace open source. In fact, you're probably already experiencing some of them. According to Synopsys's recent report, 97% of applications leverage open source code, and 78% of the average application is open source. Open source provides an opportunity to invite the global community to contribute diverse ideas to your projects. Developers can quickly address security vulnerabilities in major open source projects faster than waiting on a single company to fix a closed source library. By putting your code out there publicly, you'll hold it to higher scrutiny, which encourages better development practices and quality of code. And open source is the work you can share publicly and celebrate. This positively impacts your engineering brand and ability to hire and retain talent. In 2021, there were over 3.3 million external contributions made to company-led open source on GitHub. That means someone that doesn't work in the company contributed to the project. I think that's pretty amazing. But with over 2.6 billion contributions made on the platform in the same time frame, that 3.3 million seems incredibly small, especially in the context of what your companies are contributing to the world. That disconnect is only slowing our progress. So let's talk about what we can do to improve from here. Step 1 is to think about how you manage open source. Consider the following scenarios, and if your company has a process on these. If not, work towards one. For the following scenarios, consuming open source, contributing to open source, and publishing projects, do you have somewhere to go to find this information, or someone to ask, or a team? If not, do you need it? And when you're ready, here's how you can frame setting up process and policy. First, Make it easy for developers to use open source. According to the latest Tidelift survey, the majority of organizations, 61%, have a formal approval process for introducing new open source components. But getting approval to use those components in large organizations is slow and tedious. Approval can take a week or more. That's a week before you're unblocked from using that library to continue your work. Second, make it easy for developers to contribute to open source. I saw a developer try to make a contribution back to an open source project. The project requested she sign a contributor license agreement, or a CLA, before beginning to make a contribution. The developer went from team to team scrambling at the company, trying to get approval to sign the CLA and make the contribution. She ended up not hearing back for weeks and ultimately didn't contribute the fix. Our lack of process around contributing to open source inhibited her from making upstream fixes to that project. Third, make it easy for developers to release open source code. Make every effort to open source anything that isn't your secret sauce. By putting your code out there, you're inviting developers to use your software. Some of them will want to contribute their ideas and innovate with you. Those are your first users. Set up guidelines internally for creating projects that are inclusive and welcoming. And think about what good maintainership and governance means for your projects. Step 2 is considering to create an open source program office, or an OSPO. This will help provide structure to manage your company's participation in open source. This will also help supercharge growth around your process because you will need an owner to work cross-functionally to reduce barriers with many departments like legal, HR, engineering, and security. They can also help you to increase your organizational confidence in open source and reduce developer friction. From startups to large companies across tech, financial services to academia, they're all creating OSPOs. This group is the front line at your company for support on open source when developers have questions. There's also some great public resources available if you're interested in setting up your own OSPO. There's a network called the To-Do Group, which provides resources, case studies, guides, and how-tos, as well as surveys like these, all aiming to help organizations establish an OSPO. New OSPOs are created by all sorts of people: developers, attorneys, program managers, who have all seen the need and taken initiative. If you don't already have one, consider creating an OSPO today. Like Nadia's quote earlier said, as we're becoming increasingly more reliant in open source, we have a responsibility to give back to the open source community. You can get started by sponsoring the projects and developers your company relies on. I picked a few examples of how to sponsor, but this is far from an exhaustive list. Outreachy organizes 3-month paid internships with free and open source software projects for people who are typically underrepresented in those projects. Open Collective gives open source projects a transparent way to collect funding and manage their finances. And of course, at GitHub, we have GitHub Sponsors, which enables companies and individuals to financially support projects or specific developers. You can also sponsor foundations that represent critical ecosystems like Linux, Apache, Eclipse, OpenJS, and Python. Growing reliance on open source means it's time for us to recognize how many parts of our critical infrastructure depend on open source and how essential it is we invest in keeping the ecosystem healthy and secure. In light of the security events we witnessed with SolarWinds and Log4j, these are key reminders of the importance of securing critical code. Collectively, we must work across industries and communities to secure the software supply chain and make it easy for open source maintainers to secure their projects. By engaging in alliances and partnerships with security organizations like OpenSSF, we can reduce security risk around open source for everyone. At GitHub, we're the home of open source. We have the largest developer community in the world with over 73 million developers and growing. We depend on open source to help us quickly build the products the developer community loves. Modern software development is about collaboration and about leveraging the power of open source, and that's no different for us at GitHub. We recently released a technical preview of GitHub Code Search. We wouldn't have gotten anywhere close to its current state without the excellent work of tens of thousands of open source contributors and maintainers who built the tools we use, the libraries we depend on, and whose insightful ideas we could adopt and develop. This is a small selection of acknowledgement to the communities and developers that enabled us to move fast. While open source and community is core to our values at GitHub, we have a lot more we can do to increase participation. To that end, last year we established our own GitHub open source program office to empower developers to participate in open source and use open source safely. We encourage contributions to open source, and nearly half of our staff is contributing to projects we depend on. Along the way, we've improved some of our approval process to make it easier for staff to use and contribute to open source. And now we're focused on being good stewards of our projects in the community and sustaining the ecosystem. This isn't just about us. We're all in this together. By removing barriers to entry, we can grow the community so we can build software for everyone. We can do that by reducing organizational barriers around open source, so it's easier for developers inside companies to use, contribute, and create more open source. With your help, we'll pave the way to build the future of software together. Thank you.